Mr. British Hodl in the building. We finally got you on the pod. I'm so excited for this one.
I like the energy. Thank you for having me.
All right, all right.
Apologies it took so long to organize, by the way. I apologize.
No worries at all. We're here now. Present is what matters. So let's get this thing rolling. So, obviously, British Hodl, right? Bitcoin, huge fan that you are. There's Michael Saylor. Wanted to ask you because I describe Michael Saylor as the intersection of Bezos, Musk, and Warren Buffett. He's got the engineering rigor of Bezos, the eccentric genius and retail follower base of a Musk, and the long-term capital allocation instincts or strategy of a Buffett. Essentially the trifecta. And I'm curious, what's your view on Michael Saylor, and how do you think posterity will look back on his contributions to the world?
So I feel like I'm one of the luckiest people in Bitcoin because I had dinner with Michael Saylor at his house when they were in 2021, when there were four of us. And that's thanks to my friend Eric Weiss, who orange pilled Michael Saylor, basically. And I was lucky enough to have dinner like in that environment. It was just four people, right? This was like before the major skyrocketing fame that he's had. And I learned something on that day at that dinner, and that is that I thought I was smart, but I'm dumb as shit because Michael Saylor is basically the smartest person I had ever met, ever, and still is the most smartest, fastest thinking person that I've met in not only his field, but the ability to adapt and think different things in different fields. Like that's what I think about him. That's why the overwhelming, in terms of like a single allocation of my net worth is in MSTR and will stay there.
Okay, interesting. Great perspective, I think. So, as we know, Microstrategy, right? It was worth about $1 billion in August 2020. I think around this time when you may have had that dinner. It's now worth over $100 billion, and it was added to the NASDAQ 100 last year. What do you think is the likelihood of a September announcement that the company will be added to the S&P 500? And if so, what do you think this means in the bigger picture?
Yeah, I think they've basically hit all the metrics. It's just the political side of the S&P 500, and we'll see whether they do it. I think there's over a 50% chance of that happening. And if that happens, it's going to unlock somewhere between 10 and $15 billion worth of inflows into the stock.
Okay, and what do you think are or could be the implications for other Bitcoin-related companies and the Bitcoin price itself, if S&P 500 inclusion happens?
I think it's remarkable. I mean, look, at the end of the day, the MSTR is if they get S&P 500 inclusion as a Bitcoin treasury company, they are basically signaling to the world that using Bitcoin as your productive asset is enough. That is such a huge shift. All of this idea of you've got to have a productive business, you've got to find a solution, you've got to do this, that, and the other, all the bullshit that we've all been taught about capitalism basically comes to roost based on the fact that really what you need is something that stores value the best. That's the apex asset. So that's what I'm looking forward to. And if that happens, I think you're looking at, other companies are gonna really pay attention to this after the S&P 500 inclusion. And then on top of that, it now forces the credit rating agencies to grade the debt of MSTR, which then allows retirement funds, income funds, all this other stuff to start buying the preferred products that they're launching.
That's a great point, and would love to get to the preferred products in a bit here. Before we go there, though, wanted to ask, how big do you think strategy could realistically get? If Bitcoin is going up forever, is there any theoretical ceiling for MSTR itself?
No, it will expand the stock market, which is why they're going to want it in there.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll check it back in on that, but I think you'll be on target.
MSTR is going to be a $10 trillion company, minimum.
Any time frame on that?
No, not really. I don't have a time frame on that. I think it will be, I think we're going to 10x from here quite easily, and then really it's going to be about market saturation of Bitcoin.
All right. Let's zoom in a little bit and get a bit more tactical. So, Strategy, they gave ATM usage guidance recently, and then sort of retracted it just a few weeks later. What's your view on how they should manage ATM expectations and communicate new share issuance to the market? And what MNAV levels do you think are most appropriate to issue new shares versus management deciding to buy back the company's stock?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? I actually put out a tweet and I said, I think what they should do is prove, obviously, the performance difference between MSTR common stock and Bitcoin, and then launch a preferred income product, like a preferred product, which doesn't buy Bitcoin but buys MSTR stock based on the performance of MSTR stock. I don't know what the ability to do that is, and whether that would be a viable product from a legality and a regulations point of view. But that would be super interesting because now you expand the portfolio, right? You got the Bitcoin products, you got different debt cycles, different call options. Like STRK already has a call option on MSTR stock past $1,000 a share. So it's like, why couldn't you launch a preferred product that basically buys the common stock, right? And issues a dividend on buying the common stock. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I mean, I think all of these products are absolutely huge for MSTR. Like, we have not begun to scratch the surface of what's possible with. I mean, you're looking at a $150 trillion market just in the US.
Do you have a view or perspective on when it would be, favorable or most appropriate for management to buy back their own stock, whether they were doing it through the structure you mentioned or through a different avenue?
Yeah, I mean, at absolute one metric that you instantly start doing that is below a 1 MNAV, right? Like, so if MSTR ever gets to a below 1 MNAV, you immediately stop buying Bitcoin and you start buying the stock, right? So, and they know that. They've said that. Outside of that, it starts getting really interesting, right? So it's like, if you're at let's say they go back to the guidance of using 2.5 as a baseline to start ATMing the common stock. If you're at a 2, do you buy this common stock and juice it up to a 2.5 so that gets the market interested so you can start ATMing the common stock? I don't know. Again, that's going to be up to the geniuses that work for Strategy and the data that they can see on the buying inflows of the common stock and their bankers, right, to decide. The thing I want them to have the flexibility to do that and financially engineer. Everyone thinks like Apple is like this massively innovative company, which is why it has the valuation that it has. It's basically a financially engineered product. The amount of stock buybacks that they've done has directly correlated to the value appreciation of the company, right? So that's what I want them to have, the flexibility to do that when they see it. And I can't say when they should do it because I don't have flow data on stock demand. Their bankers will have that data, and as and when they see fit, in order to completely financially engineer MSTR to be the financial success that it should be for portfolios, I think they should do it and execute on that.
Interesting. Yeah, and great point on Apple. I remember a couple of years ago, maybe 2022, I looked at Domino's Pizza, and I was very surprised. Over a 10-year horizon, they had outperformed, I believe they had outperformed Amazon and some other companies that you would have been like, wait, what? And the reason for that was these massive buybacks they would do. And they had a lot of debt that they would actually take on to do the buybacks, right? So of their own
At
stock.
the end of the day, like I look at the iPhone, right? And it's like, is this really an innovative product right now? Like, I don't know. I think we hit peak iPhone, right? Like, it's like, what more do you want? It's thin. It's got,
How much bigger could it get, right?
like basically a great battery. It's got the best cameras in the world. A lot of people are still buying like massive cameras to do their studio stuff and whatever. I'm using an iPhone. This is an iPhone. That's
Oh, wow.
right? Like they got the best cameras, they got the best microphones, they got the best screens. Like, what more? How much more clearer you want the screen to be? Right.
Right.
So is it really in it? What do you want? You want me to hold it here so that then a hologram pops up? Like,
Right. I think that's what people are thinking.
what do you?
That's
What, we've hit
where is it?
peak. So most things are financially engineered. Like how much more better can the Tesla get? Right. American cars are generally shit anyway, and it's the best one. So it's like, okay, well, now you have to innovate from a software perspective, right? The Cybertruck is bulletproof. It can outrun a Lamborghini, like in a straight line anyway. So what more? You're innovating now from a software point of view, and at some point, once you can actually autonomously drive the thing and it can drive you around, and you don't need to pay for a driver anymore, like at some point that will also reach its peak, and then it will be about financial engineering. So that's where most of these companies have gotten to. There's no real innovation going on. I think the real innovation from a market point of view is going to be the AI, robots, military, and stuff like that. I think that's going to be quite interesting if you really look at innovation investments over the next decade. But outside of tech, like what tech? Consumer tech? Like what more innovation you want?
Yeah, yeah, and it's almost like Saylor has he's essentially figured out the ultimate form of financial engineering here.
The only point of the stock market is to store value. And up until now, the way that you've stored value is by finding companies that you give your money to and you trust them to basically create products that people will want in 10 years to guarantee your retirement. Whereas, like if you give NVIDIA money today, it's going to take them 3 years to learn if people still want their products, because they're going to go through R&D today. It's going to take 3 years for those products to hit, to be verified, for approved for sale, safety, all this other stuff. And then in that 3-year period, you've got every competitor from everywhere else in the world. You've got, I don't know what chips China's going to come out with. I don't know what chips, forget China, any other American company is going to come out with. Look at what happened to Intel when Apple came out with their own M chips, right? Apple's own M chips, M silicon is unbelievable, right? And it took Intel years to catch up to that. So it's like, you want all of that risk, or I just buy Bitcoin, shut the fuck up, get fabulously wealthy, and protect my store of value, and then let Michael Saylor financially engineer, my retirement.
Right.
And that's really the value proposition of MSTR, which is you give us money today and tomorrow it becomes productive. Whereas with NVIDIA, it's like you give me money today and in 3 years, that's when it potentially becomes productive. So the actual cycle of turning capital into productivity has been shrunk from 3 years with a tech R&D company to 1 day.
Right.
And that's what the stock market has to value now.
Right. And perhaps that's the big innovation that a lot of people are still missing here. Like Saylor says, he's able to construct a skyscraper in 5 days.
Yeah, it is a growth company, right? And that's what people are missing. Like the fact that it is a growth company, and people are missing it because they think that he's just buying a commodity, is really the value misprice on MSTR, and that will get squeezed at some point.
All right. Well, strategy is now rolled out. I think 4 fixed income dividend products, paying as high as 8 to 10%. You wanted to talk about this, so let's go there. Partly funded by sales of the common equity. Would you say, are you at all nervous about these products, or do you think they just further fortify the company and its overall strategy?
I'm absolutely not nervous about this. I think they're amazing products. It's basically an arbitrage between the dividend that they're promising and the CAGR on Bitcoin, and then ultimately the CAGR on MSTR. So the question that you got to ask yourself, whether you want to get nervous about these products or not, is do you think Bitcoin and then MSTR will CAGR higher than the dividend amount? So they're offering, let's say, 9% on the STRC product. do you think Bitcoin's going to go up at more than 9% a year? And do you think MSTR is going to go above 9% a year? That's it. That's the financial. That's the end of the financial conversation. Yeah, that's the trade.
Yeah, many companies have followed in Strategy's footsteps. Right, first, sort of mimicking their convertible notes. Then they're not always on the same terms, though. They're trying to mimic their ATM usage.
Who's mimicked their convertible notes?
Not mimic, but have tried to used convertible notes. I mean, there are many in the market have done it. Semler Scientific. I mean, they're not always on the same terms, though, right?
Okay,
not always
but has it mimicked?
It hasn't necessarily not fully mimicked, but they followed a similar playbook, a similar strategy.
But it hasn't worked.
Yes, and there's my point.
The one thing that has worked for all these other treasury companies is ATMing the stock. That's it.
And this is actually precisely my point, though. So I imagine I've heard other companies are now talking about this. Metaplanet in Japan, they're looking to set up preferred stock. Semler Scientific has talked about doing something like that. As more of these preferred and fixed income products come to market, and they sort of, essentially they'll be competing on what the dividend payout could be. Okay, Strategy is paying 8 to 10%. Maybe I'll pay 11%. Maybe I'll pay 12%. Do you think that process can get out of hand? You know, having some of these companies coming down the line, setting up similar products, offering rates that maybe at some point get too tight to beat that Bitcoin CAGR, and then that sort of causes some market dynamics that could cause things to cascade, sell-offs on Bitcoin to have to service those dividend payments and sort of, I don't want to say lead us to a bear market, but something looking like that. Do you think that could be a potential problem? And since Strategy owns so much Bitcoin, ultimately hurt Strategy as well.
I want to point out something, and everyone else can fact check me on this. Every non-mining treasury company combined owns less than 15% of MSTR stack. That's what we're talking about. Just to compare the scale of what's going on here. Non-mining, so take out Mara, take out all of the miners, CleanSpark, all of them. Just add up worldwide all of the treasury companies, right? Actually, I want to put a caveat here because 21 Capital has 40-something thousand Bitcoin that were donated to them by their founders, right? So that's different. We're going to look at like new acquisition. All of them combined that have started buying have bought less than 15% of Strategy's current stack. So if I was Strategy, I would want them to try and offer 20% yields and 20% dividends, because at some point they will get fucked. And at some point, I, as a financial engineer of Strategy, when they're trading at a 70% of their underlying Bitcoin stock, can just buy the company for MSTR stock and acquire Bitcoin at a 30% discount. Absolutely. Please do it as much as you can.
That's interesting. That's interesting. And I think your numbers probably right or around that ballpark, the 15%.
Hey, I know they're right.
A lot of these companies, though, do have very aggressive targets, and I think they will be able to achieve them over time.
What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean?
Okay, so take Metaplanet, for example. I think they aim to own. I mean, they increased their targets in terms of how much Bitcoin they want to acquire for the next few years. This year, I think they're trying to get to 30,000. And then by 2027, I believe they're trying to get to 210,000.
Hey, listen, I'm trying to get to 1% of the Bitcoin supply as well.
Yeah, but can you
I'm trying to do it. I'm trying. That's my intent. That's my stated goal and intention. I'm trying to get to 1% of this total Bitcoin supply. God loves a trier. And by the way, I'm not saying this in any negative way for Metaplanet. I own Metaplanet stock. I think Dylan and I think Simon and I think the whole team is doing a phenomenal job, and all of the 100%. I believe in what Metaplanet is doing, but and that's one of the reasons why I invested in Nakamoto, which is David Bailey's basically like. I think David Bailey, by the way, and Nakamoto have the only single unique proposition of a Bitcoin treasury company that I've heard so far. And we're going to talk about that if you want. It's a new thing that's just the SPAC has just merged. But none of these guys have got anything unique. Right? So really, when I buy treasury companies, all I'm doing is short-term trading the potential that they'll have an MNAV expansion for like 3 weeks. That's all I'm doing. Because ultimately, strategy is going to win. It has already won. It's so far ahead of everybody else. And the most gentlemanly thing that Michael Saylor can do is say, I want you to do well. I want you to get to number 2 position, and then we'll fight for number 1. Good fucking luck. That's my bit. So good fucking luck is my bit. That's not said.
I think we're on the same page about. I don't think any of these companies will catch up. I mean, Microstrategy has reached escape velocity. I was rather making the point. I don't think Metaplanet or some of these other big names will be, will cause any of these issues down the line around the preferred stocks and the high yields I'm mentioning. But a lot of these copycats who are looking to just pump the stock, who knows how big that total market could get and what could go wrong there. And that was.
By the way, look, what is it going to get to? Okay, everyone's saying, okay, it could get to, I don't know. How many Bitcoin do these guys need to own for it to cause a problem?
Oh, I think that we'll find out. For me, it's more about what are they offering with the yields. We'll see on this. I don't think this stuff will be an issue. I do think it's worth discussing at this point, especially looking how the last bear market was caused. Things do get out of hand.
So let's talk about the bear market. Let's talk about that because this is a very important conversation. In order for a bear market to come around, you would have to dump Bitcoin onto the market, right? So if you've got an offering that doesn't require you to dump Bitcoin onto the market, could you have a treasury company bear market without having a Bitcoin bear market?
That's a possibility. That could happen.
Right? Because they're not, strategy can trade at a 0.5 MNAV and they never need to sell any of their Bitcoin because none of the Bitcoin is encumbered. Any of these other companies are not raising money by guaranteeing Bitcoin as the collateral. So you could have them trading at 0.5 MNAV for 3 years and they never need to sell any Bitcoin because even the dividend, even if you look at Strategy's offering, they're guaranteeing the dividends by selling, ATMing the stock, not by selling their Bitcoin.
Yeah, and they have very flexible terms around that too, to be able to.
Exactly. With STRC, they can basically like suspend paying, right? Yeah. They can basically.
It's brilliant what they're doing. They're not going to be the problem. They're not going to be a problem.
I mean, I want to see a problem. I want to see a problem. Like, I want some of these companies to try push too hard, go bankrupt. Like, yeah, I want to see that. I absolutely want. This is a healthy market. You absolutely want to see that. We want to see what are the limits of this.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting view. Want to move on a little bit here. So investors with the best performance over the past couple of years have started to think about Bitcoin as their hurdle rate. I know you have that mindset as well, and that has led you to decide to make some investments outside of Bitcoin, like Strategy that you talked about, Metaplanet, as you mentioned, because you think it could deliver essentially a better risk-adjusted return over time than Bitcoin. When thinking about some of these other BTC treasury companies, you've already talked about Metaplanet, but I was wondering if you could address the Smarter Web company in particular because of your ties to UK. And the team seems to be doing really well there. The stock has performed well. Is that a company that you would look at and consider? And if not, why not?
I own it. I own Smarter Web Company as well. I mean, when I say I own it, I don't own it with like 40% of my total net worth, right? It's like it's a fraction of a percent that's in my speculative account. It's another reason why I did the private pipe deal on Nakamoto, because Nakamoto launched that, right? So yeah, absolutely. And look, the beautiful thing about the worldwide treasury company boom is that it allows us to get into our competitive bags again, right? I don't want to see a Japanese company be number two to an American company, right? I want to see a British company be number two in Bitcoin holdings to an American company. We accept America's going to have the number one, right? It's strategy. I want to see a British company be number two, right? A Japanese person should want to see a Japanese company be number two, right? A Korean person should want to see a Korean company be number two. Singaporean should want to see a Singapore company be number two. Let's do this. This is great. The competition is great. We want to do this. I want Smarter Web Company to have 50,000 Bitcoin and be the number two, outside of the US company, and then have 100,000 Bitcoin. I want them to leave MetaPlanet in the dust. I will do everything I can to help them because I want to see the UK and a British company be number two. Absolutely. Does that mean I'm going to dump 50% of my Bitcoin and put it into Smarter Web Company? No, it doesn't. Because for the first, and by the way, you're going to see this, right? You're going to see over the next year or so, there's going to be personalities that are telling people to put majority of their net worth into treasury companies. Why? Because they're employed by them. I'm not. I've never sold a single thing to the Bitcoin community. I've never taken a single sponsor in 3 years, 4 years since I've been making videos. I don't have any advisory shares. I don't have any board seats. I don't get paid by any treasury company. Why? Firstly, because I made a commitment that if I was going to get into content creation for Bitcoin, I wanted to be able to do it for 8 years, day in, day out, without taking a single payment. That doesn't mean I won't make any money from being British Hodl in the future or whatever. I'm just saying up till now. Secondly, I think that you have to be very careful on the intention of the person that you're listening to. And I think that, a lot of people are taking positions and taking paychecks from treasury companies, and it's one of the best investments. If I had a treasury company, I'd be doing the same thing. I'd be buying up influencers. I'd be buying up influencers like celebrities and basically using them to pitch my company. And you just be careful, right? I think we're going to enter a very treacherous period here with this going on. So I want to advise people to be very careful. And I want to remind people that for the first time in history, you can just buy the underlying asset, right? When we went through the dot-com boom, you couldn't own a piece of the internet. So you actually had to be right about the company that was going to win. With Bitcoin, I can welcome 1 million companies buying up Bitcoin and not own any of them because I own the thing that they want to buy. Mm-hmm. I own the Bitcoin. And it's the first time in human history that you can actually do that. And that's a beautiful thing. The average person watching doesn't need to worry about strategy, MetaPlanet, SWC, any one of these, right? You don't need to worry about anything. All you have to do is buy the Bitcoin, shut the fuck up, and you're going to get fabulously wealthy. It's a very unique moment. It's never happened before.
Yeah, no, makes sense. And because you did want to talk about this Nakamoto, and you mentioned it here again. Could you give us your quick? What do you think? What's your value prop on that? Why do you think it's this very unique company that provides something extremely differentiated from Microstrategy and any of the other treasury companies?
Firstly, again, I think it's pretty clear right now, but for the people in the back of the audience, I am an investor in Nakamoto. I invested in the pipe deal of Nakamoto. I am an investor. I want to make this very, very clear, right? I don't have advisory shares. I'm not employed by them to do promotions or anything like that. I am a strict investor. And the reason why I invested after I got pitched 18 of these treasury company propositions is that I fundamentally believe that David Bailey and Tyler at UTXO and all those guys have proven that they have the ability, skill set, And just the doggedness that it takes to go into countries where there is trapped capital in retirement funds, in all these things, and get it into Bitcoin. They've proven that they have that skill. And most importantly, they have one thing that even strategy doesn't have, which is the media engine. The fact that they have the ability to spring up a Bitcoin conference in any city at any moment in time and have, but they're about to do one in Hong Kong, right? This upcoming week, right? They're going to have maybe 20,000 people there if they're lucky. No one else, including strategy, has that media engine where they can launch. You don't think that there's going to be a Bitcoin conference UK coming up with SWC around? You don't think that there's going to be a Bitcoin conference somewhere in Africa as soon as they launch an African treasury company? Like Lagos would be a great place to do that, right? They're about to run. They're basically, they can run a conference, media engine, et cetera, in any market that they want, that they decide to have a treasury company in. And I think that's a unique skill set that nobody else has. And that's why I decided to invest in them. Everyone else is basically doing ATMs. They're doing the one thing that strategy did first 4 years ago.
Right. And a lot of them aren't getting, they're struggling to get above that MNAV, or that MNAV is like going like this. So we'll see on that. But no, thanks for addressing that. So we're talking about what the cycle dynamics could look like this time around, and wanted to dive deeper into that. So as we know, the 4-year Bitcoin cycle, it's linked to Bitcoin's halving every 4 years, and it's played out like clockwork essentially. But we also know that this cycle is structurally different because of corporate and institutional adoption. We have the ETFs, we have these corporate treasuries that we're talking about, and even some sovereign nation states are starting to adopt Bitcoin as well. And so, how are you modeling? Things from a Bitcoin and crypto cycle perspective, given the depth and the new layers of institutional adoption that we're seeing?
It's really hard. It's really hard. It's hard because you saw it with the Galaxy Digital dump, right? They dumped 80,000, 0.5% of the total supply onto the market, and it moved the price down by 3%, right? Some moron just sold 23,000 Bitcoin. We're recording this on the 25th, right? So some idiot just sold 23,000 Bitcoin on a Sunday with absolutely low liquidity, futures market not open, et cetera, in the market, and drove the price down. I guarantee you what happened there is they bought some puts, and then they sold, 23,000 Bitcoin into the market on a low liquidity day. If you're gonna do something like it, this move this weekend is just a stupid move to do if there was no hedge positions in place, right? We're too advanced now, where if you wanted to dump 23,000 Bitcoin onto the market, you're going to go get in touch with players that are going to know how to do this properly, right? So I guarantee you there were some hedge positions in place, and we should see price recover pretty quickly. Now, what I'm noticing and what this price action tells you, especially with the Galaxy Digital thing, is that there is a bed of buy orders in the market that are just trailing the price. That tells you that smart players are in the game. Retail doesn't buy like that. Retail chases a price. Retail goes, oh, the price went up 10%. I'm going to miss out. I'm going to buy some now. Retail causes those blow off tops. Smart money doesn't do that. There is an enormous amount of smart money sitting in this market because you can see it in the price action. Smart money says, it's going up. When it dips 5%, 10%, let's put a buy order there. Just put a trailing buy order. When it dips, I'll buy it. When it dips, I'll buy it. When it dips, I'll buy it. So what have we seen? We've seen price action like that, right? Stair steps up, consolidates. Stair steps up, consolidates. Stair steps up, consolidates. That's not dumb money. That's smart money buying. So I don't know what happens to this price cycle. There's two ways that it can go. The only time you're going to see a bear market being created like what we've seen before is if all of these buy orders, these bed of buy orders, suddenly disappear. Could happen. Could happen. But now you start getting into the game theory of Bitcoin, which is there's only 21 million. So if there's a coordinated, quote unquote, coordinated effort to remove those buy orders from the market, to let the price dip, who reneges on the deal first, right? Who says, all right, so the price has gone down 20%, that's good enough for me? Which nation state says 20% down is enough for me? Let me start buying before we agreed to let it drop to 40, 50, 60%. Who reneges first, right? So that's a very interesting dynamic. We've never had to deal with that before. I don't know. I think my gut tells me that big players don't want to see IBIT go from $70 billion in AUM to $340 billion in AUM and then back down to 70 billion for 3 years because they make their fees on 20 basis points on a monthly basis. So I think they want to see it go to 340 billion and then stay there because that's how they make most of their money. I don't think strategy wants to see, Bitcoin do the 4x and then down for 3 years anymore. Because how do they get their money? They get their money by selling preferred products, and those preferred products do better if the Bitcoin price does this for 8 years. So I think the incentives have changed. That doesn't mean that retail can't. By the way, Bitcoin's dead for retail right now, by the way. I don't know if you've seen the data on like how interested retail is. They're basically not interested. So I don't know if retail comes in at some point and then causes some kind of blow off top, but I doubt it. I don't think they're smart enough. And I think we're past that now. So I can't give you my thoughts because the dynamics are so different, but these are the possibilities. And I'm basing my holding pattern on the fact that the probability for a repeating 4-year cycle, which is basically 3 data points, not happening now that we have the market structure changing.
Yeah, no, makes sense. And I think last year, maybe around this time, throughout the summer as well, there was a lot of talk, or not just a lot, but definitely a lot more talk than there is this year about what the impact of Fed rate cuts would be, the liquidity cycle, asset inflation from government spending and more money printing. The Fed is likely to cut in September and possibly again later this year. And this is essentially lining up perfectly to fuel what is typically has been the most bullish phase of the 4-year cycle, as we were just talking about that. What do you think the effect of the next Fed the next Fed easing cycle will be on the price of Bitcoin and these Bitcoin-backed equities?
Yeah, I don't know. I think that the Federal Reserve easing this time round, I mean, it really depends on liquidity expansion, right? It's not just about the easing, it's about the liquidity expansion. If the easing comes with liquidity expansion, it's obviously going to do really well. If easing does not cause liquidity expansion, then we're going to just continue doing exactly what we're doing for a while. The thing that people miss is that it's not only the Federal Reserve's job to cause liquidity expansion. The White House and the Treasury is really what can cause massive liquidity expansion on an institutional level without the Federal Reserve involved. The Federal Reserve's interest rate loosening cycle, it could cause some liquidity expansion, but I think here I would actually prefer they don't lower rates because it will force the president and Treasury Secretary Bessent to figure that out. And when they do it, it will be more overboard than what the Fed could do. So I actually think it would be better if the Federal Reserve doesn't lower rates. Might take longer, but I think it will be a much more violent expansion.
What are some of the possibilities of what you think the Treasury and the White House may potentially do if the Fed
look at what they're doing already. Treasury buybacks. They just did the biggest Treasury buyback that they've done. You don't think that can expand? They can. There's so many things that. And again, there's stuff that, like, look at what Strategy's done, right? Strategy's created these preferred products out of thin air using AI, right? Nobody knew that this was going to be the next thing that they were going to do. I think that the Treasury could do things to cause expansion that we haven't even thought of yet. I don't have access to things, to data to be able to tell you, like, okay, this would be the best path forward. But I guarantee you, if Jerome Powell does not cause a loosening environment, they've got a midterm election coming up, right? They are going to expand liquidity one way or the other.
Yeah, no, makes sense. Makes sense.
And by the way, Besant was one of the executing traders that broke the Bank of England. So if you don't think he knows how to manipulate liquidity and currencies, like, he's not a moron. But Besant is one of the most dangerous financial engineers, in a good way, right, for us, that has ever played the role of Treasury Secretary.
Yeah, no, fair points, fair points. So I guess kind of sticking on theme here, we're talking a little bit about the U.S. government, what things they might do. We've talked about strategy. We're talking about Bitcoin. Want to bring in a slightly different dynamic, but related. Tom Lee has recently made the argument that strategy could have a sovereign put, meaning if the U.S. government wanted to acquire Bitcoin at scale, MSTR would be the most efficient way for them to do that. We've recently seen the U.S. take an equity stake in Intel, and talk about doing the same for some other companies. What's your view on Tom's take here?
I want to just correct one thing. They've not taken a stake in Intel. They got given a stake in Intel. This is Intel, because they haven't paid for it. They didn't take it. Intel basically said, here's 10%, right? This was a very strategic move from Intel's perspective to come under the wing of the U.S. Of the U.S. and the Trump administration here. This is a very, very strategic move by Intel, right? Yes, I agree with Tom. I think that, the U.S. basically using MSTR as its methodology to get Bitcoin exposure is super smart. They basically have it anyway, right? Microstrategy is not going to go and re-domicile itself to, Singapore. It's under U.S. jurisdiction. They have control over that Bitcoin, right? Any government for the future has control, some jurisdictional control over Strategy's Bitcoin, because it is situated in the jurisdiction of the United States. So I think it just makes sense, right? I think they should absolutely go and buy some MSTR stock to give them some exposure to Bitcoin. I don't see anything wrong with that.
Yeah. And in terms of the immediate future, how likely do you think it is that either later this year or sometime next year that we hear the U.S. is acquiring Bitcoin, either through this method we were just describing or just buying Bitcoin directly?
Yeah. I've been slightly concerned by how little support Cynthia Lummis's bill is getting, considering she's got the president behind her and everything else. Saying that, my friends at the Bitcoin Policy Institute in the U.S. are very positive with the work that they're doing, are very aggressive and very bullish on the work and the conversations that they're having. They had a wonderful conference in D.C., and I think the team over there is doing as good of a job as you can do when it comes to moving, a regulatory regulation, politics, everything. They're doing a good job at sort of moving things forward on that side. So I'm less bullish on this year now, after seeing how fast things have moved or how slow things have moved, and I'm more bullish on the term, right? On this administration's term. And I think, again, like, you met Zach, right? At when we were in New York, like, right, Zach, yeah, basically, figured out the unlock for $20 to $40 billion of purchasing from the executive branch. And he's part of the Bitcoin Policy Institute. And I think they've got some very, very smart people having some very, very difficult and smart conversations. And I think, I think they'll do really well, but I think it's going to be a longer term thing than everyone wants it to be, as everything is with politics, by the way.
Yeah, and who knows? Maybe that happening in towards the end of the term could be what ignites the next part of the bull cycle of 2028, 2029. That
Maybe,
period.
yeah, maybe.
Could be a cool legacy thing to leave behind. Could be a cool way to leave office.
Yep.
Yeah. So as we close here, you were just mentioning, a meeting in NYC. It's where we met in person. And shout out to the good folks over at PubKey. What was your favorite thing you experienced during your NYC visit, and what were you most surprised about as you talked and interacted with different investors and Bitcoiners?
Wow. I mean, it was a pretty remarkable trip to New York. It was my first time to New York. I met amazing Bitcoiners, met yourself, met all the people that were there at PubKey. I was there to ring the closing bell at the NASDAQ with YieldMax. But, from a personal point of view, the single best moment for me, and I can say this now, I couldn't say it before, but I can say it now because I got permission to put it on Twitter after my meeting. But to meet face to face with Robert Mitchnick, who is running, basically he's like the director of Bitcoin at BlackRock, right? And to go over to their offices and meet him and actually have a 30-minute private conversation and learn how bullish they are and really the amount of immense progress they've made in a very, very short period of time. I mean, to put it into perspective, IBIT is the second highest revenue generating product, from what I understand, at iShares worldwide today. And I think as soon as they breach, like he told me, I can't remember the exact number, but as soon as they breach $88 billion in AUM, it is the number one, I believe, highest revenue generating product for BlackRock or for iShares worldwide. And it launched in 2024. Like, just think about that, right? And then so having the conversation that I had with him, just I didn't know that I could become more bullish, and I think that organization and him in particular, I think they're the only people that could have made me more bullish, and to get that opportunity to go and one-on-one, just casually just shake hands, we've known each other online for a minute, and just being able to see how serious they are, how focused they are, and how in tune they are to, and how they think about Bitcoin and how they think about asset allocation, and how that was the absolute highlight of my trip personally, right? Personally for me. But again, what I loved in a second thing to that, what I loved was seeing how open Wall Street is to Bitcoin. The fact that I was at the closing bell of the NASDAQ for Tidal and YieldMax, and having CNBC anchors roll down and basically say, "Oh, British Hodl." Like, what type of reality are we living in, right? Like, this is nuts, right? This is absolutely nuts. And then, I don't even, I'm telling you what the number one thing for me was, but everything else, there was just such great moments. One of the things I loved about the PubKey thing that we did, by the way, I put a tweet out and I don't even know how many people showed up. I was just kind of in the flow.
It was a good
crowd, right? Yeah. But here's what was crazy about that crowd. What I loved the most was the simple variance of the type of people that were there, right? You had financiers, you had construction guys. I would say what I call the belly of America, right? Or the belly of the world type of people. You had a variance of people there. And that was awesome because that tells you like Bitcoin is helping and is a part of the conversation for everyone. Zach showed up, he's a lawyer, right? He's working on Bitcoin policy stuff. Like there's just, and everyone's talking, right? It's not like there's these segregated rooms and this, that, and the other. Like everyone is talking and focused on the same mission, and that's awesome.
Yeah. Well put. Very thoughtful. Wanted to ask you a question along the same lines here. So a little bit more philosophical. For many, Bitcoin has been a profound transformational experience, and it gives them a sense of clarity, direction, even peace. And I think from what I've noticed. From you, it's only watched you since last year. Some of the things you put online, but you seem a lot calmer these days compared to when I first started watching last year. And I'm just curious, how has Bitcoin changed you? And do you think it's caused you to sort of slow down, find more peace in a world that's just constantly moving at a chaotic pace?
You're not gonna like my answer on this one. You're not gonna like my answer on this one because you've asked a question from a very, very great spiritual perspective, and my answer is gonna be a bit dark. I'm gonna warn you right now. Like my answer is gonna be a bit dark here.
Rich, this is why we have you on the show, to get the hot take. So let's hear it.
So I'm gonna have to provide a lot of context on this because it's gonna be all right. Here we go. So when I first started talking about Bitcoin, right, it was like I became quote unquote British Hodl, whatever that means, in 2021 on Clubhouse. And then I didn't start my YouTube channel and come out as like my face, this is who I am, blah, 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 until 2023. And then really it was like June 15th, 2023 that I just let loose. June 15, 2023 is the day that BlackRock filed for the ETF. That to me was time's running out. That was the first time that I truly felt in my gut time's running out. Like people like my parents are going to be left behind now.
And Bitcoin was what, 40, 50K then?
Something like that. Something like that. I can't even remember, right? Like it wasn't even about price. It was time is running out. Like it was fun up until then, right? It was fun to say bullish stuff. It was fun to the 3 rules of Bitcoin. It was fun to do all that. That day, when I read that filing, I was like, we're fucked. Like this is it. This is the single most important date for Bitcoin since January 3rd, 2009. And so I turned the jets on. And from that day till basically like December of last year of 2024, I went as hard as I could. And there was like a 8-month window where my channel was outgrowing, venture-backed companies with 30 people on staff trying to create Bitcoin content. Because the message, and I'm so glad, but the message was resonating. Of you need to get to 1 Bitcoin right fucking now.
It's like, right.
And I'm so glad I did that, right? And so, going back to your question of I seem a lot calmer. The truth of why I seem a lot calmer is in December of 2024, when we crossed 100,000, the reality that it was too late sat in. It sunk in for me. Because at $100,000 of Bitcoin, less than 0.4% of the world can now get to 1 Bitcoin if they discover it now. Right? And the true reality of this is even scarier, because if you contemplate this even more, I know people, I mean, the average millionaire, let's say, like $1 to $5 million, right? Based on all the wealth studies that have ever been done, 90% of people who have got, like, let's say, a $500,000 to a $30 million net worth have the majority of that in real estate. So you think about it and you go, okay, so someone with a $5 million net worth, can they even buy something for $100,000 at the snap of their fingers? Not possible. Most property millionaires that I know do not have $100,000 to $150,000 of spare liquidity lying around to make a decision on something they figured out yesterday and heard a crazy guy on the internet saying get to one Bitcoin, right? You can't do it. So I've calmed down because, and this is where the happy hippies hate me, because the reality of what I was shouting about for 3 years finally caught up with me. I remember, I've never actually shared this story. I remember sitting there. I used to live in South America at this time. And I remember sitting on my balcony, just overlooking the whole city and just thinking, everyone here is fucked. So while everyone was jumping up and down about $100,000 Bitcoin, I remember sitting there smoking a cigar, looking at the world going, it's too late. It's too late. My job for the world is finished. I know you weren't expecting this answer, but this is the truth. My job is done for the world. Now I need to figure out where my focus changes to. And I've now realized where my focus changes to, which is why I put out the videos saying, yeah, get to one Bitcoin. That message has made and will make people so much amount of money, and their families are protected. Those people that listened and got to the one Bitcoin or more and whatever. But now my message focuses inwards. Like the group that my message becomes relevant for now is even smaller, right? Because the reality is 0.4% can get to one Bitcoin. And even then, that's at 100,000. Just every 10,000 that we go up now shrinks that 0.4%. So when we get to 200,000, it's like people with a $10 million net worth can just about do it. Right? And I said this last year, I mean, over the time I've been making videos, like we are going to start pricing out multi-millionaires now, right? We get to $250,000 a coin and we start pricing out $15 million to $30 million. We get to $500,000. What are you going to do? You're going to sell a bedroom in one of your properties, right? You're probably going to have to sell a property. And I know, dealing with my own parents, how hard it is for a real estate investor to sell a property just to buy Bitcoin. It's gotten to that point now. It's very real at this point. And people are crying about the fact that the price is going down. And I'm sitting here going, this gives me hope that people have the chance to get to one fucking Bitcoin still, right? And so it's a bittersweet. It's a bittersweet moment. Yeah, I'm good. My family's good. Everyone I care about owns Bitcoin. I've done a good job, right? If everyone thought I was just banging people's heads on the wall and on YouTube, that's not true. I was banging people's heads against the wall in real life, And everyone I really love and care about has got Bitcoin and is good. Has Bitcoin exposure. Has had it for years and it is great. But that's why I'm calmer.
No, very, very. I definitely wasn't expecting that, but I see it makes sense. I see it, the logic is there. And for people who are maybe hearing this for the first time, hearing your content for the first time, and really want to understand this piece about why get to the one Bitcoin, like why it's so important. Like you mentioned, okay, it could help secure their financial future, it could help secure their families. But are there other ways to do that? Or is this problem of inflation, this problem, this big print that Larry Lepard talks about, is what some are anticipating that's coming down the line? Is that the big problem? Not just securing their financial freedom, but doing something, buying, getting to this one Bitcoin so you don't fall so far behind, so you don't so you don't continue in this system where you could essentially never catch up. Like, what is the core fundamental reason why folks need to get to Bitcoin, other than just the upside? Is there a downside case that they should really be thinking about?
The only problem that humanity faces is storing and protecting your energy. That's it. Every other problem is downstream of that, right? And for 230 years, we have had financial subjugation because of the fiat system, where you work, you do the right thing, you're a police officer, a doctor, a lawyer, a teacher, or whatever, an investor, and you do the right thing and to make this money. You make this money called dollars. And they forgot to teach you that dollars are not money, dollars are currency. And money and currency are two different things. So for 230 years, people have been taught to believe that a dollar is money, when wealthy people, the people that understand the system, have always known that you earn currency through the exchange of energy, and then that currency must be put into money to protect it. And then when you want to spend that money, you take that money, you convert it into currency, and you spend it. You activate it in the economy. And this is the fundamental issue that everyone faces. Rich, poor, doesn't matter. This is the issue. It's one issue. Bitcoin comes along and says all of those forms of money were shit. Because supply can be controlled, demand can be controlled, and if you can control supply and demand, you can basically do whatever you want with it. So take real estate, for example, right? Real estate is money. Gold is money. Equities are money. When you want to activate that money, you sell it or you borrow against it, they give you currency. Now you take that currency and you go and activate it in the economy however you want to. The problem with real estate is a government dictates how many building permits there are. It's fully controlled. The problem with companies and equities is you can basically inspire unicorns, right? Reduce regulation, increase investment, and suddenly a unicorn will be born. With Bitcoin, the supply is absolutely controlled and it's finite. So the problem has been is that you've been slaving away to earn currency. And then if you understood the system and you decided to convert it into money, which is in the form of a company, for example, you now had to become a full-time professional fucking investor after slaving away to earn that currency in order to keep it. Right? Because if you invested in Apple, you did really well. You protected your energy. If you invested in Intel, you didn't. So you had to become a financial fucking analyst while being a teacher, a lawyer, a police officer, or whatever else that you decided to dedicate your life to in order just to keep the fucking money that you earned. Bitcoin fixes that. That's why Bitcoin is important.
That was great. That was good. That was good. That was good. That was good. There's another question. I'm just going to ask you because we're here. How do you think this thing managed to succeed against all odds? This thing that, and I know there were plenty, it's not like it just came out of the blue like some people think. There were plenty of attempts before Bitcoin, and this is the one that just happened to succeed. But how do you think this, you're saying this is the biggest problem that humanity faces, and now there's this solution that has come to start. This is like very, very improbable, right? Unlikely. It's like something out of a movie. And for it to get this big to the point and so soon, so quick, what has it been, 15 years? And now it's, all these institutions are coming in. You can't turn on you can't go a couple of days without hearing a bit about Bitcoin. The U.S. government might be buying it soon. How did it manage to succeed? And why would the powers that be, the old guard, allow it to?
Now you want me to get into my conspiracy bag. I am of the fundamental belief that it is more likely than not that Bitcoin is a creation of the US government. That's the more I'm in it, the more I believe that. Because it's convenient that it comes out in 2009 and it's the perfect solution for the next stage of the US dollar. Because the world was moving on to gold, right? China's moving on to gold, Russia's moving on to gold, everyone owns gold. What better way to create this new arc of the US than demonetize gold overnight, which you can do if Bitcoin exists. Bitcoin becomes God's money, and it allows you, if you own and control enough of it, to basically overnight at any moment you want defund gold, which is what all these other countries have been putting their money into, and now they're suddenly reliant back on the US dollar again. It's perfect. It's such perfection of financial engineering, because that's what happened in 1971, right? Everyone was on the gold standard, and suddenly the US said, yeah, it doesn't matter anymore. Whereas now everyone's building up their gold stockpile. And what if you just say, yeah, that's cool, it doesn't matter anymore? It's phenomenal. It's such perfect financial engineering that I find it hard to believe that it's a coincidence.
Well, thanks for going there, and thanks for sharing all of this with us. In spirit of ending on maybe a little brighter note, and I'm curious about this, and I'm sure many of our listeners would be interested to hear this as well. What's a day in the life of British Hodl look like when we're not seeing you with that background? It's always mysterious. Like, what's happening back there? What's a day in the life look like for you?
Yeah, that's it. It's intentional. Like, I really don't. I'm not a social media person. Like, when when people meet me kind of in person, I kind of prefer, unless it's a topic that I'm an expert in, I'm trying to learn from different people, different things, and whatever else. The beautiful thing about my life is that I can do whatever the fuck I want to do whenever I want to do it. Now, that comes with its own challenges. In simple terms, just like any other man out there, my job is to decide on what my purpose is and then relentlessly get after it on a day-to-day basis. And up until now, my purpose has been to get as many people to one Bitcoin as possible. So everything in my life, whether it was smoking cigars, going to the gym, whatever it was engineered around the sole purpose of getting as many people to one Bitcoin as possible. So that's what I do. Every single day, it's just a question of, okay, so how do we move closer to the goal? And yeah, there is no like day. My life works. I feel happiest when I'm the most routine. So before, when I was younger, I really enjoyed traveling and shit like that. And then the more you travel, the more you realize that traveling sucks now, because the moment traveling became safe for everyone means that it was basically manicured for everyone. So yeah, you're going to see a different shade of elephant, or a different shade of green, or a different shade of snow, or a different shade of beach. but it's the same shit everywhere, right? And so you realize that all the travel is the same and it's shit, completely manicured, right? Every kind of car is basically the same car. I'm not a big car guy, by the way. I like watches. And so it's really about, what is your purpose? What do you want to dedicate yourself to? What do you believe that God, I'm not religious, but I believe in God. What do you believe that God put you on this earth for? And then figuring out how to get that accomplished on a day-to-day basis so you can go to sleep proud and wake up hungry.
Go to sleep proud, wake up hungry. Let's end with that. That's some food for thought there. I like that. That's a nice little pithy line there. That's I think a good guide for life in general. So yeah. Well, wonderful, British. Thank you for being generous with the time here. That kind of just flew by. I enjoyed that a lot. I think we hit on
Me too.
quite a few topics. So yeah, thanks again for joining us, and I can't wait to get this one out there.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me. And it was a pleasure to meet you in New York as well. I look forward to many more.
Likewise. Thanks again.